All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar on saving energy to fight pollution. I really appreciate you all joining us here tonight to learn about this important topic. My name is Ren Smith. My pronouns are he, him, or they, them. I'm an organizer with Sierra Club, and I'm joined here tonight by some of my Sierra Club colleagues, as well as our partner representing Conservation Colorado. Tonight, we're here to talk about energy efficiency and electrification. These are incredibly important strategies that can provide much needed benefits for customers and the climate. We'll be getting started with our presentation in just a few minutes, but first I'd like to open with a land and labor acknowledgement. I'll have it up on the screen here so you can read along if you like. We honor and acknowledge that we are on the traditional territories and ancestral homelands of the Cheyenne and Arapaho nations, along with the Lakota, Ute, and others. 48 tribes have called this land home. We recognize the indigenous peoples as the original stewards of the land, water, plants, and animals who called this place home. Let us acknowledge the painful history of genocide and forced removal from this territory, and respect the many diverse indigenous peoples still connected to this land. We pay our respect to them and give thanks to all tribal nations and the ancestors of this place. We also acknowledge the labor of enslaved Africans and their descendants who worked this stolen land for the colonists, and who continue to disproportionately face economic oppression, racism, violence, and exploitation, including environmental injustice. So thank you for joining me in that. I really believe that it's important to acknowledge past and present injustices as we fight for a better future. Take a deep breath here, and we'll get started. So here is a quick overview of the plan for our time together tonight. We'll start with some background on the key concepts in this case, including electrification and efficiency. Then we'll discuss the impacts of Xcel's plans and what this means for you and your community. We'll have some time for Q&A, so if any questions come to mind during the presentation, please use the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen, and we'll take as many as we can. Then there will be an opportunity to take action together on this important issue, and finally, we'll close out the evening with a few next steps and ideas for how to get involved. If there are any other questions at that point, I can stay on a few extra minutes and try to get to them. So that's what we got for you tonight. I'm really excited for you to hear from our speakers. So without further ado, I'll pass it to my friend Sarah Sneed, Sierra Club's Building Electrification Campaign Representative in Colorado, to kick us off with a little crash course on efficiency and electrification.
Thanks, Ren. Hi, everyone. I'm so excited to dive into this really important topic tonight. So what's happening with Xcel and this really important case at the PUC? To start with a little bit of background, in 2021, recognizing that the energy economy was rapidly changing, Colorado legislators passed a bill to help update and modernize how utilities do their long-term planning and how Colorado regulators like the Public Utilities Commission can do their job. For folks that don't know, the Colorado PUC is a state agency that serves the public interest by regulating utilities to make sure that the people of Colorado receive safe, reliable, and reasonably priced energy that is consistent with the economic, environmental, and social values of our state. So thanks to this legislation that was passed in 2021, the PUC is now better armed with the tools it needs to hold utilities like Xcel Energy accountable to taking full advantage of the tools that they have as a utility to reduce energy use and ultimately save customers money. So right now, Xcel is in the process of implementing this bill, coming up with a plan to deliver to the PUC. That is really important because it essentially lays out the high-level vision, goals, and budgets for the tools that Xcel can and should be using to reduce energy consumption, things like energy efficiency, building electrification, and demand-side management, which we'll get into what those things exactly are in a moment. But the key thing here is that as Colorado is transitioning to a clean energy economy, it's up to utilities like Xcel Energy to do everything possible to not only stop investing in fossil fuels and ramp up investments in clean energy, but also be cutting back on energy waste and taking steps to reduce our demand for energy altogether. So that's a little bit of the big picture. Thanks, Ren. So yeah, This case is one of many that Xcel will be completing at the Public Utilities Commission regarding their long-term energy planning. But this case helps decide certain pieces of what that energy transition looks like. This helps Xcel set targets for energy savings and determine budgets and goals with regards to demand side management programs on both the gas side of their business and the electric side, and programs and budgets for things like building electrification, which is an important tool for Xcel to meet electricity demand and reduce energy use. So yeah, using a lot of words here. Let's get into what they mean. What is demand side management? So DSM refers to a variety of measures to encourage customers to reduce their demand for electricity at what are called peak times. A good example of a peak time would be like the 5 to 8 p.m. window when a lot of folks are getting home from work, they're cooking dinner, they're maybe doing laundry, they're using more energy because they're using their appliances. By reducing the electricity load that is needed, especially during these peak times when electricity demand is really high, utilities can dispatch less energy. And this is good because this ultimately reduces the need to build and rely on power generation like coal and gas plants. So one example of a DSM strategy is what's called demand response. These programs essentially provide incentives to customers for reducing their energy consumption. So that could be in the form of a credit on your energy bill if you keep your energy use at a peak time below a certain amount, or it could be implementing time of use rates. So making the rate that consumers pay for their electricity differ depending on the time of day. In addition to that is energy efficiency, which is another demand side management strategy. Energy efficiency refers to measures to use less energy to perform the same task or produce the same result. Great example of energy efficiency is swapping out outdated incandescent light bulbs for LEDs that are more efficient and use less energy. Another example is swapping out old appliances that consume a lot of energy for more efficient ones. Think about things like refrigerators, washing machines, water heaters, furnaces. All of these appliances in our buildings consume a lot of energy. And so switching them out for the most efficient versions of those appliances has a huge impact on the overall energy consumed. And there's other things like even just updating buildings themselves, installing insulation in the walls and floors and ceilings, and updating windows to be the most efficient double pane versions of windows that you can buy to really make sure that our buildings are airtight and we're wasting less energy and using our resources more efficiently, excuse me. So all of these strategies are really important. They're just one puzzle piece in getting to a clean energy transition, but a really important one. And so that is some of what Xcel Energy is addressing in their plan. Sorry, my cat is distracting me. In addition to DSM and efficiency, we have building electrification, my favorite thing. In addition to reducing energy waste, we need to electrify our buildings. And what do we mean by that? Building electrification is the transition away from providing energy to our buildings with fossil fuels like methane gas to all electric net zero buildings that support a smart, resilient, clean energy grid. In Colorado alone, commercial and residential buildings account for 19% of the total greenhouse gas emissions from fossil fuel combustion in the state. That's a lot of climate pollution that just comes from buildings. And so we cannot meet our climate goals without electrifying our buildings. And doing so is not only good for the climate, it reaps enormous health and economic benefits because we know burning gas in our buildings is expensive, it's polluting, and it's dangerous. The you'll see this fun fact on the slide. Not really fun, more terrifying. All gas appliances in homes and buildings in Colorado pollute 4 times more nitrous oxide than all of our gas power plants on the grid in Colorado combined. Nitrous oxide is a precursor to ozone, so we know our buildings that have gas appliances, which is most of them, are contributing a lot to Colorado's air quality problem. So it's a multi-layered issue, and building electrification is a key solution that utilities like Xcel need to be implementing. Next slide. Thanks, Ren. So yeah, we have lots of solutions that I just described. They're at our fingertips, but we need utilities like Xcel to step up and do their part. We're at a historic moment in history where there are hundreds of millions of dollars in federal funding to support states with the clean energy transition. And this DSM case that Xcel is currently undergoing at the Public Utilities Commission is one of many opportunities that they have to take full advantage of these federal dollars. And not only that, but make their energy savings programs more equitable and make sure that they're actually benefiting the people that need them most. Unfortunately, Xcel's plan fails to do this. It does not go far enough. And so we are calling on Xcel to increase the goals, programs, and budgets for all of the solutions I just described. We want to make sure that Xcel is taking full advantage of these federal dollars and accelerating this transition. And we need to make sure that Xcel is providing the right guardrails to ensure that those who have been most impacted by the harms of the fossil fuel economy and by the climate crisis are the first ones, first and foremost, to reap the benefits of this clean energy transition. So with that, I'll kick it over to Lorena to talk a little bit more about what this means for you and your community. Oh, all right. And I didn't introduce you, Lorena. So if you would please introduce yourself and your role.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much, Sarah. Hi, everybody. I am Lorena Gonzalez. I am the Climate Campaign Manager at Conservation Colorado. And yeah, really good to be with you all here tonight. And so I want to get into what this means for you and our communities. Ren, can you go to the next slide, please? And so sometimes these concepts can seem really abstract, right? And so what does this actually mean on the ground? What does this mean for ourselves, our families, and our communities? And so I want to start by naming that many buildings in Colorado, including our homes and our places where we work, use natural gas for heating and cooling. And the truth is that there is nothing natural about natural gas. And when we talk about natural gas, we are talking about methane gas, like Sarah just mentioned, which is a greenhouse gas that causes dangerous indoor and outdoor air pollution. And so we know that inside our homes, our gas-powered appliances, such as stoves and furnaces, are producing toxic air pollution that can be extremely harmful due to its high concentration in our homes. And we know that it can worsen asthma and other respiratory conditions and even cause premature death. And new research actually found that over 10% of current childhood asthma in Colorado can be attributed to gas stove use. And so what this really means is that more than 10% of childhood asthma in Colorado is preventable if we move towards electric stoves and furnaces and energy efficient upgrades. We also know that this burden falls heaviest on low-income populations and communities of color who may inhabit smaller and older homes, are less likely to have range hoods or other ventilation in place, and tend to have higher existing rates of asthma. And I can attest to this personally. I have asthma. I've had it since I was a kid, which I attribute to growing up in a community on the south side of Chicago that was completely encircled by toxic industry. And what I've been realizing in the last few years as I've been doing this work is just how often my natural gas powered heating triggers my asthma attacks. I live in a small apartment. My heat vent faces my couch. And for the last year, I have had to use my emergency inhaler at least once a day. And, it's so unfair to all of us, right? That, some of us are renters, some of us have very little options. And so that's why engaging in cases like this one is super, super important. I also want to name some of the impacts outside of our homes. So Xcel Energy's gas plants release massive amounts of health-harming pollution into the air, are creating smog and put people at an elevated risk of health issues. Xcel's gas plants are disproportionately located in brown and Black communities. And so this is telling us that some of Colorado's low income and communities of color have little to no reprieve from pollution, whether it be indoors or outdoors. And so without proactive and targeted investment, these communities may least be able to participate in the transition to cleaner electric appliances. And so that's why it's so critical that electrification and efficiency investments are targeted to disproportionately impacted communities, and the barriers to accessing, low-income energy efficiency programs, for example, are removed. And let's go into the next slide, please, Ren. And so we've talked about how our continued use of natural gas is bad for our health. I also want to make sure you understand that natural gas use in buildings contributes to climate change, which impacts us all. Gas stoves have been found to leak methane into the environment, which again is a potent greenhouse gas. And I do want to share the findings of a recent report from last year where scientists recently measured methane emissions from 53 California homes and found that most leaks happened when the stove was off. And that was caused by loose couplings and fittings of the gas lines and pipes. And so these are things that are really dangerous to our climate and should not be in our homes. And it's also important to note when we have utilities like Xcel who want to expand fossil fuel gas infrastructure to protect their bottom lines, this is at odds with our greenhouse gas pollution reduction goals that are required by Colorado law. And those laws, those goals are saying that our natural gas use has to go down, not up. And so failing to meet these greenhouse gas pollution reduction goals does open us up to more climate emergencies that impact our health and our wallets. So this could mean more trips to the hospital or an increase of missed days or from school or work. And, for those who lack insurance, this could be really damaging and set people back, and it could really rack up some health costs for them. The final thing I want to talk about, next slide, Ren, is that efficiency and electrification can help save customers money. Sarah did a good job of naming this already, but I'd like to put a finer point on it. Far too often, people are having to choose between putting food on the table and paying high energy bills. At a time when gas prices are at an all-time high and many customers are struggling to pay their bills, we really need Xcel to invest in strategies to help us move away from gas. Programs that reduce energy consumption save customers money on bills. And even Xcel admits this. In a recent proceeding, a representative from the company said that the average customer would pay $141 less in annual utility bills to operate electric heating compared to gas. And so if Xcel truly cares about the financial and physical well-being of its customers, they should keep energy bills low, and they should be assisting everyone in getting the most energy efficient appliances, insulation, and retrofitting. And so to wrap, we know that the future is electric. And with this case, we have a really big opportunity before us to let Xcel know that we're paying attention. We need them to quickly embrace that future to support cleaner and healthier communities. And so with that, I'm gonna pass it back to Ren to walk us through a case study.
Thank you so much to both of you for the excellent presentation. This is truly an important issue from so many standpoints, but we need to remember the equity impacts of Xcel's plans. So before we get ready to hear some questions and take action on this important case, I have one more slide for you. I wanted to share a really powerful example of why this case is so important right now. This is one of Xcel's polluting fracked gas plants, the Arapahoe Generating Station. It's located in South Denver, just east of I-25 and the Platte River, between Evans and Dartmouth. The pollution from this plant impacts everyone in Denver, but it has the greatest and most direct impacts in surrounding neighborhoods like College View, Ruby Hill, Athmar Park, University Hill, Overland, and Sun Valley. Sierra Club issued a report with partners that examined the demographics of some of these neighborhoods and the impacts of the plant from an equity perspective, and it's a pretty textbook story of environmental injustice. The neighborhoods surrounding the Arapahoe gas plant have lower average incomes and a higher percentage of people of color than most of the state. They have cumulative levels of pollution from multiple sources, including the highway and Superfund sites, and they have high urban heat vulnerability scores that will exacerbate the effects of climate crisis and high temperatures. So this polluter needs to go as soon as possible to protect public health and help us move away from fossil fuels. But just last Friday, Xcel filed a request to extend its contract for the plant by another year due to quote unquote low capacity to meet its customers' electricity demand. So that's a real world example of why it's so important that Xcel uses a combination of the strategies we discussed tonight. We need to prioritize reducing the need for gas on the electric grid as quickly as possible so that we can retire big polluters like the Arapahoe gas plant, save on energy bills, and breathe cleaner air in our communities. So with that, we will have some time for Q&A. So please allow me a second to stop the presentation and find our first question. Cool. The only question I'm seeing right now in the chat is from Cindy. Has Sierra Club compiled a list of available funds for energy efficiency and renewable energy projects, specifically in Colorado, that are included in the Inflation Reduction Act? Do either of our panelists, know of any similar resources?
I can chime in here. That is a great question. I know internally we are in the process of pulling together what funds will be available for consumers specifically, a list of those funds. In the meantime, there is a great resource that I'm going to put in the chat. An organization called Rewiring America has a calculator that you can fill out. You can put your address and all the information about where you live, and that will help, including your income and your household size. And it kind of tallies up the different efficiency and electrification incentives, whether that be rebates or tax credits that you could qualify for. So that's the best resource I have on hand, but I know at some point we will be compiling a consumer-facing list that will be shareable. So stay tuned.
Thanks, Sarah. I have a couple questions from Rachel. Hey, Rachel. One, what's the timeline on if Xcel will get that extension for the Arapahoe plant? I can speak to that. We don't have a procedural schedule for that request yet, to my knowledge, but stakeholders will be intervening within the next 30 days. So beyond that, we'll probably have more details, but yeah, this is super new action going on at the PUC. So yeah, stay tuned for more ways to get involved there. And the next question is, are there any economic downsides for a utility when it comes to their customers electrifying or lowering the demand for energy?
I can answer this one. Good question.